Kicking off at number 5, Hoya Baciu Forest, Romania. Purportedly the most haunted forest in the world, which is arguable, but is definitely the most haunted forest in Romania, although they do have the whole Transylvania thing too, so I don't even know what to think anymore. Situated near Cluj-Napoca, the Hoya Baciu Forest covers an area of over 250 hectares and has fervently been referred to as the Bermuda Triangle of the country. It carries the reputation of being the location of thousands of ghost sightings, unexplained apparitions, disembodied faces appearing in photographs, and even a hotspot for UFO activity. Its most notorious feature is what the locals call the Dead Zone, an inexplicable clearing in the forest that is completely devoid of vegetation. A nearly perfect circle deep in the center of the woods where nothing has grown for centuries. Soil samples have been taken of this site, and even local geologists have claimed that there is no explanation for the lack of vegetation, which is worrying. Right? Granted, while a lot of the mystery surrounding the forest has been exaggerated by local legend, there's something not quite right about this place. The mystery continues. Coming in at number 4, the Black Forest, Germany. I mean, this place literally got its name from being a dark, ominous, creepy tangle of wood and thorns. And then we had the old brothers Grimm, who took one look at this place and thought, this place is creepy, let's write some fairy tales about it. Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood, they are the folk legends that they are because of the sinister dread of the Black Forest. Don't get me wrong, this place is beautiful and a breathtaking sight to behold, but beneath the surface are some truly hair-raising tales. Take the legend of the Freyschutzen, for example, arcane marksmen of legend that was said to have retreated into the forest to make a pact with the devil. Well, they never made it out alive, but instead were bound to the forest, shooting at intruders with demonic accuracy. Then there's the wolf of Fraudenstadt, an elusive beast that always managed to catch a sheep without being seen. When a farmer stayed awake to catch it one night, he managed to shoot the wolf, and the next morning a villager was found lying in his bed covered in blood, with a gunshot wound to his back. The Black Forest has been a hive for European folktales and urban legend, and a mystical reminder that not everything may be as it seems.
Number 3, Bighorn Mountains Mystery. A fun little Reddit tale for y'all. This one comes from user Camel Panda, taking place in July of 1985. His dad was an avid outdoorsman, and together they'd go on many adventures together in the woods. On this particular day, they were hiking down a very steep slope to get to an area of a creek that had been dammed up by beavers, hoping to catch some big trout. Panda had climbed out onto a rock ledge and was looking for a way down when he saw the stock and action of a old rusty rifle sticking out of a tree, where the tree had grown around the barrel years before, about 10 inches above the ground. He and his dad climbed down to check it out, finding a small cave at the base of the rock formation. Inside they found 3 heavy gauge unopened cans of food, an old cast iron pot that had holes rusted all the way through it, a crusty old saddle and bridle set, and a very deteriorated heavy wool blanket rolled up and tied with a leather belt. When they unwrapped the blanket, they found several personal items, including a rusty old cap and ball black powder revolver, a leather satchel with a lead pistol, a powder horn with no black powder in it, tarnished old cartridges, a straight razor, and most unsettling was a shirt with holes in it and over half of it stained in red. The only thing that somewhat dated this fateful campsite were the weapons, both of which were made sometime in the 1870s. There's no way to ever know what happened to the man who owned all this stuff, but the fact that he or someone he knew was obviously targeted twice with either a firearm or arrows, and all his belongings were sitting right where he left them, possibly 100 years later, it's kinda highly unlikely he left that area alive. Discovering what amounts to be a 100-year-old crime scene in a very remote wilderness freaked out Camo, and rightfully so. Sadly, I don't know what he and his dad did with what they found, but I'm hoping the family of the deceased has been given closure. Number 2, Glenn and Bessie. It's been 73 years since Glenn and Bessie Hyde vanished on a honeymoon voyage through the Grand Canyon, but what exactly happened to them is still a mystery. Some folks say that Bessie wanted to be the first woman to boat through the Grand Canyon, and she almost made it. Bessie and Glenn were honeymooning in northern Arizona at the Grand Canyon when they vanished. They were traveling down the Colorado River by scow in October of 1928, and for reference, since I didn't know this before, a scow is a flat-bottomed boat with sloping ends that was a lighter option for those wanting to, explore. Glenn had run tough rivers before, but Bessie was a, relatively boating newbie. The couple ran across other boaters a few weeks before their disappearance, who said they got the feeling that Bessie wanted to turn back, but Glenn was pushing her on, determined. If they completed the trip successfully, they could go on a paid lecture tour. So this trip was more than just fun, there was actually money at stake. Cut to several months later, the Hydes boat was discovered that winter, seemingly undisturbed. It was upright and full of supplies, but the couple was gone. Now there are many theories about what happened to the Hydes. Did they disembark and try a too difficult side hike? Did they have an argument that turned violent? Or were they abducted? There are conflicting reports about what happened to them, and more than one Bessie Hyde sighting in the years that followed. A massive search made national headlines, but never turned up a trace of the pair. So, did they abandon the scow and attempt the brutal hike out to the rim? A former whitewater guide who has recited the Hyde legend for years, has actually written a book about the disappearance called Sunk Without a Sound: The Tragic Colorado River Honeymoon of Glenn and Bessie Hyde. It's by writer Brad Dimmock and is one of 2 recent books about the mystery. A veteran of over more than 25 years as a boatman on the Colorado River, Brad has also worked as a commercial guide on major rivers from Alaska to Tanzania. With his fellow boatman Jerry Ledbetter, Brad built a replica of the Hyde's heavy wooden scow, a boxy boat, then common to the northwest, that is said to resemble a floating coffin. So that's not ominous at all. In 1996, the duo launched themselves onto the river to find out what really happened to the Hydes. From historical documents, the writers found that Glenn's plan was that, he and his young bride would run the canyon, then, like I said before, go on that lecture circuit and make some money, which, hey, gotta make it somehow. In the Hydes' time, like now, outdoor daring was chic. Charles Lindbergh had recently crossed the Atlantic, George Mallory had disappeared on Everest. The public craved more heroes of this sort of type. Hey, we gotta follow a trend somehow. In those days, though, the Grand Canyon was a hero-making run. There were no commercial river trips. The rapids were the domain of seasoned explorers and professional expeditions, so not honeymooners in a homemade boat. Brad interviewed participants on a 1971 commercial boat trip, during which an elderly woman announced over the evening campfire she was Bessie Hyde. So he asked her, haha, what'd you do with Glenn? Just as a joke. And she responded, I killed him, without even looking up. Apparently the honeymooners had a fight, she impaled Glenn and hiked out to Peach Springs, Arizona, then caught a bus back east to start a new life. A series of equally tantalizing twists occurred in the ensuing years, and Brad investigated them all, because that lead is just nutso. A tiny, explosive pierced skull was found in the garage of a deceased river guide. Was it Glenn's? A veteran river guide with a secretive streak passed away, and it was discovered her real name was Bessie, and the Hyde's marriage certificate was found in her belongings. But none of these have actually had any sort of conclusive ending, so I guess we'll never know what happened. Number 1, the Hoya Baciu Forest in Romania. So this forest in Transylvania has been called one of the world's most haunted places after a series of paranormal activities and strange occurrences. I swear I did look up how to pronounce it, so if I butchered it, I apologize. Granted, being located in Transylvania, home to all things ooky spooky vampire gothic, probably only helps with the rumors. There have been many unsettling tales that have been told of the Romanian forest for hundreds of years, making it nearly impossible to separate fact from, fiction. Located in northwestern Romania, it's known as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania, since strange occurrences are said to have occurred here. Kind of like a shepherd who's said to have disappeared with a flock of 200 sheep, and a young girl who disappeared only to emerge 5 years later without having aged. However, one of the strangest events that ever happened in the forest comes from the tale of a woman who disappeared with a 15th century coin in her pocket. After a significant amount of time had passed, the woman returned, as if no time had passed, with the same coin. Its reputation as a home for the paranormal and alien encounters is heightened by its eerie atmosphere of twisted skeletal trees that span across 700 acres. This was due to the reported UFO sightings that were famously photographed in the 1960s by biologist Alexandru Sift, which showed flying objects and gave the forest a reputation as a place for strange and unexplainable events. Even the forest trees themselves hold an enigma, as these 200-year-old trees seem to be young, and most of them are twisted at the trunk or unusual in shape. Most of the paranormal activity seems to be concentrated in that particular part of the forest, which is free of vegetation and formed into a perfect circle. The soil of this vegetation-free area has been tested, and no anomalies were found that would prevent the growth of any plant life. Visitors often report feeling intense feelings of anxiety and the feeling of being constantly watched. As the forest's website warns, and locals tend to stay away because they fear that if they enter, they will never find their way out. There are many first-hand reports from people who visited the forest and left with strange symptoms which range from a mild case of unease to physical symptoms such as severe rashes, headaches, and even burns.
Number 5 on this list is the Black Forest. The Black Forest is located in Germany and would be the perfect hiding spot for the devil if he was to camp out in the woods. Trip Savvy writes, when the Romans arrived in these woods, they were spooked by its impenetrable darkness and named it the Black Forest. In German, this place is known as the Schwarzwald and has developed a fairy tale persona for its iconic cuckoo clock, world-famous spas, and numerous monasteries, castles, and ruins. Legend holds that it is haunted by werewolves, witches, and even the devil. The tale of Der Grossman is that of a tall, horribly disfigured man with bulging eyes and many arms. Bad children who entered the forest were made to confess their sins to him, and the worst children were never found again. Or consider a Grimm original. The story of Die Gensmegd tells of a princess on her way to meet the prince in a faraway kingdom. But the maid accompanying her had ill intentions and forced the young princess to trade places with her. The maid took her magical steed, a talking horse called Falada, and when they arrived at the castle, the false princess had Falada killed to hide her misdeed, and the real princess work as a goose girl. The real princess has Falada's skull hung over the city's gate, earning the attention of the king. She tells her story and he punishes the false princess by rolling her around the city in a spiked barrel until she died. Those are a bunch of legends that pertain to this forest, but the most common one that isn't even mentioned there is the Headless Horseman. People have often spotted a Headless Horseman racing around these woods, and some people have said that he's even kidnapped individuals before. This forest is almost completely without light as well. Like, it's just dark all the time, and even if the sun is totally out, shadows will cover this whole place, making it very difficult to see. This place is teeming with evil energy. They knew it back then when the Romans came into this place. They knew it when the brothers Grimm made stories about this place. And the locals still know it now. The Black Forest in Germany is a prime spot where the devil could be hiding, and I wouldn't be surprised if he is. Number 4 on this list is the Pine Barrens. Now, this forest might not be home to the devil that you're thinking of, but it is certainly home to a devil. CN Traveler writes, the heavily forested Pine Barrens spans over 1 million acres and 7 counties in New Jersey. The area thrived during the colonial era, host to sawmills, paper mills, and other industries. People eventually abandoned the mills in surrounding villages when coal was discovered to the west in Pennsylvania, leaving behind ghost towns and some say a very supernatural wanderer. The most popular Pine Barrens resident is without a doubt the Jersey Devil. According to legend, the creature was born in 1735 to Deborah Leeds, her 13th child, with leathery wings, a goat's head, and hooves. It flew up the Leeds chimney and into the Barrens, and it's been killing livestock and creeping out South Jersey residents ever since. The Jersey Devil is one of the most famous urban legends in the world. Now, this isn't the actual devil. We aren't talking about Satan here who rules over the underworld, but still, this is a very menacing creature that you would not want to run into. We also know for a fact that this creature is, in fact, living out in these haunted woods. Artists' renditions of this creature have it looking like half horse, half bird, half demon. Also, just because it eats livestock doesn't mean that it won't take a bite out of a human either. This is a forest that should be avoided at all costs. Number 3 on this list is the Smolensk Forest. This is a forest in Russia that is just riddled with tragedy. Reader's Digest says, in 1943, at the height of World War II, German troops invaded the Smolensk forest and discovered a mass grave containing thousands upon thousands of dead Polish soldiers. Ultimately, it was determined they'd been massacred on Joseph Stalin's orders. If the presence of 20,000 lost souls wasn't enough to frighten people away, then the tragic plane crash that took place in 2010, which killed 96 Polish political, military, and business leaders, hammered the nail into the coffin, so to speak. Horrible, guys. Just a horrible place that has seen some horrible things. I don't think that anybody would be shocked if the devil popped up here and just appeared to be hiding out in this Russian forest the whole time. Obviously, to any regular human being, that wouldn't be a place that you'd want to go, but I imagine the devil probably be loving it. Number 2 on this list is the Daring Woods. Another English forest here, and another one that features a highwayman. CN Traveler says the Daring Woods are commonly referred to as the Screaming Woods, or, you know, a perfect place to host your next family camping trip. Visitors report hearing blood-curdling screams coming from the forest depths at night, as well as footsteps and whispers on foggy days. The screams are often attributed to a highwayman who was captured and killed by villagers in the 18th century, and whose ghost apparently still holds quite the grudge. Others believe the hauntings are the result of a 1948 massacre where 20 people were supposedly found dead in the forest the morning of November 1st. Residents reported seeing strange lights emanating from the woods that Halloween night, and autopsies of the bodies couldn't determine a cause of death. 20 people dead in one place in a horrible massacre. The devil might not still be here, but we can say for sure that he was during that horrible tragedy. It's also very possible that a forest like this, one that has had such a bad tragedy, would attract the devil. Apparently, it's super foggy here all the time as well, which is probably just another good reason to want to hide here. Daring Woods in England is one that should definitely be avoided, I think, guys. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Aokigahara Forest. This is one of the most infamous forests in the entire world and has a horrible reputation to it. CN Traveler says, this seemingly serene forest at the foot of Mount Fuji has a tormented past. Colloquially known as Suicide Forest, Aokigahara has had the world's 2nd highest rate of suicides after the Golden Gate Bridge in 2010 alone. 247 people attempted to take their own lives, and 54 of them were successful. Some blame this trend on the forest's association with demons in Japanese mythology. Others point towards the density of the trees, which muffles sound and makes it easier to get lost. In fact, many hikers will mark their path with tape or string to make it easier to find their way back out. The sprinkling of clothing and letters left throughout the labyrinth-like woods gives Aokigahara that extra touch that will leave you in a cold sweat. Now, one thing that CN Traveler doesn't even mention here is yobatse. Yobatse is a horrible practice where people will take the elderly or the sick out into the middle of nowhere and just leave them there. This apparently used to happen a lot in Japan and still does happen to this day. If you can't take care of your grandma anymore, no worries, just take her into the forest and leave her there. It is a truly horrible, horrible thing that happens here regularly. Either way, this forest is super messed up and it seems like the perfect spot for the devil. Why is there such a high number of people taking their own lives? Why is it so eerie? Why do people take the elderly and leave them out here? Maybe it's because the devil is playing with their minds. You enter this forest feeling one way, you walk out completely different, if of course you're one of the lucky ones enough to walk out. I'd avoid this forest at all costs, folks. It may have the devil lurking inside. Number 5 on this list is the Pine Barrens Forest. The Pine Barrens Forest is haunted by something big and something deadly. Something that everybody in the region is aware of and would not want to run into by themselves. The Jersey Devil. CN Traveler says the heavily forested Pine Barrens spans over 1 million acres in 7 counties in New Jersey. The area thrived during the colonial era, host to sawmills, paper mills, and other industries. People eventually abandoned the mills in surrounding villages when coal was discovered to the west in Pennsylvania, leaving behind ghost towns and, some say, a few supernatural wanderers. The most popular Pine Barrens resident is without a doubt the Jersey Devil. According to legend, the creature was born in 1735 to Deborah Leeds, her 13th child, with leathery wings, a goat's head, and hooves. It flew up the Leeds chimney and into the Barrens, and it's been killing livestock and creeping out South Jersey residents ever since. This is one of the most famous urban legends in America. It's been spotted by many people over the years and isn't something that you want to trifle with. Dogs have been killed and taken, livestock consistently gets targeted, and there have even been stories of a young child as well. Whatever the Jersey Devil is, it's not human. It's far more devilish and demonic-like than that of a human. It would take a lot of money before I considering going into this forest. Number 4 on this list is the Black Forest. Ever heard of the brothers Grimm? 2 German academics who published folklore together, but were also reported to have been involved in some pretty paranormal stories. To get an idea of what I'm talking about, Matt Damon and Heath Ledger do a pretty good job playing them in the 2005 movie entitled The Brothers Grimm. Well, either way, this forest, the Black Forest, was the setting for a lot of their antics or stories that they would tell. Trip Savvy says, legend holds that it is haunted by werewolves, witches, and even the devil. The tale of Der Grossman is that of a tall, horribly disfigured man with bulging eyes and many arms. Bad children who entered the forest were made to confess their sins to him, and the worst children were never found again. The story of Die Gensmagda tells of a princess on her way to meet the prince in a faraway kingdom. But the maid accompanying her had ill intentions and forced the young princess to trade places with her. The maid took her magical steed, a talking horse called Falada, and when they arrived at the castle, the false princess had Falada killed to hide her misdeed and the real princess work as a goose girl. The real princess has Falada's skull hung over the city's gate, earning the attention of the king. She tells her story and he punishes the false princess by rolling her around the city in a spiked barrel until she died. So yeah, there's been some death in this forest before. It's also just so darn dark as well. Like, I know that doesn't automatically make something haunted, but it is extremely hard to navigate this forest. Whether it be because of something paranormal or because of the light and other factors, people often get lost in this place. A lot of these people that get lost as well never end up coming out either. Something is in this forest. The Romans knew it, the brothers Grimm knew it, and the locals who frequent the region, they know it as well. I would need an entire team to go with me if I ever was to enter this forest, and even then, I'm not sure I would. Number 3 on this list is the Poyani Forest. The Poyani Forest is located in Latvia and needs to be thought of as a potential hiding spot for the devil. The reason is there might be a secret hidden portal to hell right there. CN Traveler says there's nothing particularly strange about Poyani Forest at first glance until you notice the mysterious heaps of moss-covered rocks. These piles are strewn randomly throughout the forest, causing much speculation and folktales among visitors. Some claim that the forest is an old site for pagan rituals and it now has the mystic ability to heal people. Visitors even bring offerings to the stones to enhance their powers. Other visitors, though, attribute more sinister qualities to the forest, believing it to be a gateway to a parallel universe. There are reports of people suffering and even dying shortly after leaving the woods, and locals warn that stealing a rock will end in a stint of bad luck. It's that parallel universe and the rituals that interest me here. I think that there's actually a lot more going on at this forest than meets the eye. That having this be an innocent, normal collection of trees is what some people want you to think. I was reading up on this and it seems that there could have been a lot of satanic rituals performed here back in the day. Is it possible that maybe one of those rituals actually worked? That they were able to open a portal to hell and release Satan? And now the devil uses this forest as a way to travel between the two worlds? I'd ask you guys to go check it out for yourself, but that probably wouldn't be the safest, so we may never know. Number 2 on this list is the Yawata no Yabushiraza Forest. That is one heck of a mouthful, so from here on out, we're going to call this forest YNY. YNY is located in Japan and is apparently one of the country's most haunted spots. That's a pretty big title to hold because Japan is full of haunted locations and scary sights. This forest is particularly bad though because entering it could mean the end of your life. There is an extensive history with this forest and people disappearing. For some reason, when people go into this forest, they don't often come out. It's thought that their souls get spirited away to a faraway land. Now let's think about this for a second. Why or how could something like this be happening? Well, maybe the devil is chilling out in these woods and those souls are actually getting spirited straight down to hell. No one's been able to think of a logical explanation behind the disappearances, but the devil seems to make the most sense to me. This is a deep and lush forest, perfect for hiding, and whenever anyone comes in here, the devil just takes him away. I hope it's not true, but it very well could be. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Hoya Baciu Forest. The Hoya Baciu Forest is on everybody's list of the most haunted places in the world and therefore would be a great spot for the devil to be hiding out. My Best Places says the Hoya Baciu Forest is often referred to as the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania as it's said to be inhabited by the devil in person, by ghosts and perhaps even aliens. The forest gained notoriety around the 1960s when biologist Alexandru Sift photographed a flying object in the sky above the forest. After this incident, other inexplicable events soon followed, including the disappearance of a shepherd and his 200 sheep, which were never found again, and the disappearance of a 5-year-old girl who later reappeared 5 years later wearing the same clothes and without having aged even one day. A woman also disappeared after a long time with a 15th century coin in his pocket, and the case of a missing woman having reappeared in the forest with a 15th century coin in her pocket. There have also been many first-hand reports from people who have entered the forest only to come out with burns, severe rashes, headaches, and high fever, which they didn't have before. Some studies have revealed higher than usual radioactivity produced by natural uranium present in the subsoil. Pretty much everything imaginable has happened in this forest. There have even been reports of a literal UFO landing here several decades ago, guys. This place might have the most paranormal activity concentrated into one spot in the whole planet. So let's ask ourselves, why would a random forest in Romania have all this paranormal energy? Well, maybe it's because the freaking devil's there. Maybe the devil is in this forest and it's attracted all this other stuff to stop anyone from finding him. To my knowledge, there haven't been any major wars in this forest or anything like that, so it's not like a major tragedy is drawing these ghosts and demons here. I think most likely scenario, is that it's the devil. Number 5 on this list is the Yosemite National Park. This massive forest is located in California, and if it wasn't so bloody haunted, it would probably be pretty beautiful. CN Traveler says, Yosemite National Park is beloved for its epic waterfalls and giant groves, but there are areas of the park that might give you a different kind of goosebump. For example, some visitors who have hiked into the Chilnualna Falls trailhead reported hearing the distinct sound of someone crying. Native American folklore attributes the cries to a boy who drowned in nearby Gross Lake. His spirit calls out for help, but any hikers who venture into the lake will get pulled under and drown. Another Native American legend claims that some of the waterfalls in the park are haunted by an evil wind that draws people to the edge of the falls and then blows them off the cliff. A wind that draws people to the edge of the falls and then blows them off the cliff. Sounds to me like something evil might be going on here. Maybe even the work of the devil. I'm not sure who that child was and if that legend was actually true or not, but having a wind hypnotize people to the point where they jump off a cliff, that doesn't happen every day, guys. Also, let's circle back to that story with the child. Well, how did he drown? It's possible that it could have just been an accident, I'm sure, but is there something else afoot? Maybe whatever creature calls to people from the cliff also calls to them from the water too. That would be very similar to the urban legend of the water babies, where there are literal children who died in the water and now try to lure others to their death in said water. Maybe that's what this child is doing now. However, I also think it's possible that there is no child at all involved here, no water babies or anything like that. It could just be one entity doing all of this nonsense. Maybe the devil's hiding out here and it really was him all along. Number 3 on this list is Cameron Park. A park located in Texas that is quite beautiful if it weren't for the killer ghost lurking within it. CN Traveler says, Waco's Cameron Park has several spots that are reported to be paranormal hot zones, including Jacob's Ladder, a treacherous set of stairs haunted by a grabbing ghost who tug on climbers' clothes to pull them down. But perhaps the most well-known site is the Witch's Castle, a name given to crumbling ruins found deep in the park. According to one story surrounding the castle, and there are many, the ruins are the former house of a woman suspected of witchcraft in the late 1800s. Waco residents blamed the woman after people began disappearing in the surrounding woods, so they formed a mob and burned down her house while she was still inside. Some people claim to see the witch's figure wandering through Cameron Park today, even chasing down some unlucky visitors. This is a cold-blooded killer. She will pull you off your climb and watch as you fall to your death. She loves to kill. She loves the feeling of hurting people. This is a ghost that needs to be stopped. I sure as heck am not going to be the one doing it, but some team, some group, some organization of some kind has got to get it together and go in there and deal with this. Whoever the real-life Ghostbusters are, this is for you. Cameron Park should be a place where people go to experience nature, not get killed by an evil witch spirit. Number 2 on this list is Angelina National Forest. What once was a thriving area with great potential has turned into a ghost-filled zone with the paranormal. CN Traveler says, back in the early 1900s, Angelina National Forest was home to a thriving sawmill town of over 1,000 people. The mill was sadly a beacon for disaster, getting hit by a hurricane in 1911 and then by a fire in 1914. Residents soon abandoned the area, leaving behind a tiny ghost town. The abandoned site is eerie in and of itself, as ghost towns are, but rumors of the paranormal up that creepiness factor a few notches. Hikers have claimed to hear the disembodied screams of a young woman, a former resident of the town who was killed in a freak accident while visiting her boyfriend at the sawmill. A few people have even spotted her ghost wandering around the dilapidated mill. Something about abandoned sawmills is just uber creepy, folks. Especially when we have the ghost of a girl who was killed walking around it. This forest had potential. The whole area had potential. That potential was never realized though, and now it's a shell of what it could have been. Unless somebody goes in here and rids the area of the spirits that haunt it, this place will always be a sad reminder of the past. Just for the record though, I'm not going to be the person who does the paranormal cleansing. And finally, number 1 on this list is Freetown State Forest. This forest might not only be haunted by stuff of this planet, but could be haunted by creatures from other planets as well. CN Traveler says the Freetown State Forest sits smack dab in the Bridgewater Triangle, an area in southeastern Massachusetts swarming with paranormal activity, roaming specters, UFO encounters, and even Bigfoot sightings. Some believe that the forest's haunted history dates back to colonial times when settlers purchased the land, sacred burial grounds included, from the Wampanoag tribe. The transaction is said to have cursed the area, which has since been the site of satanic cult rituals and murders in the 1970s and 80s, as well as comparatively innocuous poltergeist and fireball sightings more recently. We literally have everything here, guys. Werewolves, satanic cults, murders, sacrifices, ancient burial grounds, and to top it all off, we got UFO sightings. This place is messed up. Sometimes there's just an area that for whatever reason attracts the evil and paranormal entities of the world. I'm pretty sure that's what we have here, and that's why I'm not going in by myself anytime soon. Number 5 on this list is the Yosemite National Park. This massive forest is located in California, and if it wasn't so bloody haunted, it would probably be pretty beautiful. CN Traveler says Yosemite National Park is beloved for its epic waterfalls and giant groves, but there are areas of the park that might give you a different kind of goosebump. For example, some visitors who have hiked into the Chilnualna Falls trailhead reported hearing the distinct sound of someone crying. Native American folklore attributes the cries to a boy who drowned in nearby Gross Lake. His spirit calls out for help, but any hikers who venture into the lake will get pulled under and drown. Another Native American legend claims that some of the waterfalls in the park are haunted by an evil wind that draws people to the edge of the falls and then blows them off the cliff. A wind that draws people to the edge of the falls and then blows them off the cliff. Sounds to me like something evil might be going on here. Maybe even the work of the devil. I'm not sure who that child was and if that legend was actually true or not, but having a wind hypnotize people to the point where they jump off a cliff, that doesn't happen every day, guys. Also, let's circle back to that story with the child. Well, how did he drown? It's possible that it could have just been an accident, I'm sure, but is there something else afoot? Maybe whatever creature calls to people from the cliff also calls to them from the water too. That would be very similar to the urban legend of the water babies, where there are literal children who died in the water and now try to lure others to their death in said water. Maybe that's what this child is doing now. However, I also think it's possible that there is no child at all involved here, no water babies or anything like that. It could just be one entity doing all of this nonsense. Maybe the devil's hiding out here and it really was him all along. Number 4 on this list is the Epping Forest. Located in England, this forest has been a hotspot for criminals and all things evil for basically ever. CN Traveler says the size and density of Epping Forest have made it a popular hideout for criminals and an infamous burial spot for bodies. Notorious highwayman Dick Turpin hid there in the early 1700s, and more than a dozen murder victims have been discovered in the woods since the 1960s. Now, it's no surprise then that this forest has developed a reputation for spooky sounds and ghostly apparitions. Some people also claim that if you drive to Hangman's Hill and park in neutral, your car will slowly be pulled uphill. Even if you don't believe in the myths, just the appearance of the woods is likely to send a chill up your spine. The pollarded trees haven't been cut since the late 1800s, giving them an unusually overgrown and bulbous look. So I looked into Dick Turpin, guys, and this dude was rotten to the core. A real highwayman who just robbed and murdered his way through life. Any forest that's about to attract a dude like this certainly has my attention. All the death, all the criminal activity, and then the fact that we're getting ghostly apparitions, all of these things lead me to thinking that this could be a decent hiding spot for the devil. Also, what the heck is that hill thing about? If you park your car in neutral, it just rolls up a hill? Like, that literally defies all the laws of physics that we know of. At the very least, something paranormal is going on here, that much is clear. I think there's a good chance, though, that whatever paranormal thing is happening here could have a tie with the devil.
Next up at number 3, the Devil's Tramping Ground, North Carolina. I mean, it's kind of in the name, but it seems that the entirety of North Carolina has an obsession with naming things after the devil. Devil's Rock, the Devil's Courthouse, Seven Devils, Kill Devil Hills, Devil's Branch, Devil's Chimney, Devil's Nest, Devil's Knob, hell, even the Devil's Potato Patch, and of course, the Devil's Tramping Ground. Strangely enough though, this forest bears a striking resemblance to that of the Hoya Baciu forest in Romania, and the Tramping Ground itself is a strange, unexplained, barren patch of earth where nothing grows. As the local legend goes, the place itself was the site of a battle between two rival tribes of Native Americans. Supposedly, the blood of those killed soaked the ground so thoroughly that nothing would ever grow there again. Allegedly, not even a single blade of grass will grow in the limits of the circle, seeds have been sowed there that refuse to sprout, and otherwise healthy transplanted plants wither and die within a few days. Obviously, the local legend has mutated into varying versions throughout the course of history, but one thing remains the same. No one really knows what on earth is going on at the Devil's Tramping Ground. Swinging in now at number 2, Epping Forest, England. Of course, we've got to throw England somewhere in this mix, and there's nowhere more notorious than Epping Forest in Essex. Although the home of many alleged paranormal sightings, the real matter of fact is that Epping Forest is the grisly site of over 15 murders, perhaps more, and has notoriously been used as the hideout and retreat for murderers and criminals throughout British history. Throughout the Iron Age, the forest itself is thought to be the location for numerous Roman battles, and is thought to be a candidate for the unknown final resting place of Boudica, queen of the British Iceni tribe. Allegedly, her ghost walks amongst the dense thicket at the deepest part of the wood. Epping Forest was also used as a hideout for the infamous highwayman Dick Turpin, who had retreated into the forest following a string of robberies, alongside the likes of other famous highwaymen such as Tom King and 16 String Jack. In more recent times though, Epping Forest has seen a series of brutal and tragic murders. In the 1970s, 2 children were found dead in a copse near Lippett's Hill, which would eventually become known as the Babes in the Wood murders, a tragic case that deeply affected the nation. Epping Forest is unparalleled in its violent and grisly significance, and it's a place where I definitely wouldn't like to take a stroll through late at night. And finally, at our number 1 spot, the Pine Barrens, New Jersey. Without a doubt the most haunted and, well, just straight up weird place in America. There are so many folk legends surrounding the New Jersey Pine Barrens that it's hard to pinpoint exactly where to begin, but there is one tale that supersedes all others: the legend of the Jersey Devil and the Pine Barrens' most notorious resident. Although its origins are unclear, the most widely held belief of the Jersey Devil begins with a Mrs. Leeds, a resident of Estellville, a town which borders the Pinelands. When she found out that she was pregnant for the 13th time, in disgust she cried out, "Let it be the devil." Well, when the baby arrived, that's exactly what it was, and it gave a screech, unfolded its wings, and flew out the window into the dense and desolate Pine Barrens. The creature has allegedly haunted the Pine Barrens for over 250 years, and locals, affectionately known as Pineys, consider its sightings to be too numerous to explain away as fiction. It doesn't end there though, because the Pine Barrens harbour many more creepy tales than just the Jersey Devil. Captain Kidd, the headless ghost of a Scottish sailor, the ghostly visage of the black dog, the golden-haired girl, the ghost of James Still, the white stag, the blue hole. There is a hell of a lot of creepy stuff in New Jersey, and all of it pretty much happens in the Pine Barrens.
Number 3 on this list is the Poyani Forest. The Poyani Forest is located in Latvia and needs to be thought of as a potential hiding spot for the devil. The reason is there might be a secret hidden portal to hell right there. CN Traveler says there's nothing particularly strange about Poyani Forest at first glance until you notice the mysterious heaps of moss-covered rocks. These piles are strewn randomly throughout the forest, causing much speculation and folktales among visitors. Some claim that the forest is an old site for pagan rituals and it now has the mystic ability to heal people. Visitors even bring offerings to the stones to enhance their powers. Other visitors, though, attribute more sinister qualities to the forest, believing it to be a gateway to a parallel universe. There are reports of people suffering and even dying shortly after leaving the woods, and locals warn that stealing a rock will end in a stint of bad luck. It's that parallel universe and the rituals that interest me here. I think that there's actually a lot more going on at this forest than meets the eye. That having this be an innocent, normal collection of trees is what some people want you to think. I was reading up on this, and it seems that there could have been a lot of satanic rituals performed here back in the day. Is it possible that maybe one of those rituals actually worked? That they were able to open a portal to hell and release Satan? And now the devil uses this forest as a way to travel between the two worlds? I'd ask you guys to go check it out for yourself, but that probably wouldn't be the safest, so we may never know. Number 2 on this list is the Yawata no Yabushiraza Forest. That is one heck of a mouthful, so from here on out we're going to call this forest YNY. YNY is located in Japan and is apparently one of the country's most haunted spots. That's a pretty big title to hold because Japan is full of haunted locations and scary sights. This forest is particularly bad though because entering it could mean the end of your life. There is an extensive history with this forest and people disappearing. For some reason, when people go into this forest, they don't often come out. It's thought that their souls get spirited away to a faraway land. Now let's think about this for a second. Why or how could something like this be happening? Well, maybe the devil is chilling out in these woods and those souls are actually getting spirited straight down to hell. No one's been able to think of a logical explanation behind the disappearances, but the devil seems to make the most sense to me. This is a deep and lush forest, perfect for hiding, and whenever anyone comes in here, the devil just takes him away. I hope it's not true, but it very well could be. Number 5 on this list is the forest of Brocéliande. Now, this forest has literally had young men enter into it and then never come out again. Matador Network says, according to some Celtic legends dating back to the Middle Ages, this forest in the northern part of France was said to have a mystical aura. Some people believe these woods are the ones described in the legends of King Arthur. The wizard Merlin was said to have been briefly imprisoned in an invisible tower here and is thought to be buried at a mysterious location widely called the Tomb of Merlin. Also here is the Val Sans Retour, or Valley of No Return, where it's said that the King Arthur sorceress, half-sister Morgan Le Fay, trapped and held young knights who were not faithful. After researching a decent amount about Morgan Le Fay, pretty much all of the legends indicate she's evil. She was initially supposed to be a healer, but then turned bad and got corrupted by witchcraft. Obviously, she was using this witchcraft for no good in this forest as well. Don't get me wrong, folks, being unfaithful and cheating on your partner, that isn't cool, but I also don't think that every single person who does it needs to get murdered by an evil witch. No one knows her exact kill count as far as how many men she lured in here to disappear forever, but from my reading, it certainly seems like a lot. It should also be noted that this forest underwent a horrible forest fire in 1990, and many people thought that there could be some sort of link to the curse that surrounds this place in some way. I don't know if that's true or not, but this was a particularly horrible forest fire, and considering what has happened here in the past, I wouldn't be totally shocked. If you do manage to make it through this forest without disappearing, then there could be great wonders awaiting if you manage to find Merlin's tomb. I would only imagine that there's some pretty incredible treasure or magical artifacts in that tomb if one was to find it. Granted, we have had hundreds of years to do so and no luck so far. Probably best to just stay away from this place and not risk disappearing for good yourself. Number 4 on this list is Smolensk Forest. This forest was particularly deadly if you happen to be a Polish soldier. That's right, folks, this forest was host to one of the deadlier battles in all of history. Matador Network says this really was the site of the Katyn massacre. During World War II, a mass grave with 20,000 Polish soldiers and military leaders secretly slaughtered by Joseph Stalin's army was discovered. Only a decade ago, a plane carrying nearly 100 of the most important political and business officials of Germany crashed here, killing everyone on board. It was a shocking day for the people of Poland, for whom this scary forest was already the site of a painful history. You can forgive them for believing that this patch of earth is cursed. So that's what happened, and you better believe that it's left something behind. Tons of ghostly apparitions have been sighted here throughout the years. I mean, I think when 20,000 people die, plus the tragedy with the plane, that it's just simply too much for an area to handle, and bam, now we have a haunting. Now, I think it's safe to say that people have definitely disappeared here in the past based on the circumstances, but that doesn't mean that we're all good now either. I highly doubt that the ghosts who live here are going to be totally cool with people just cutting through their home now. Extreme fog has been reported here from the locals, fog that comes on super fast without warning. It would be very easy for ghosts to snatch somebody up in all of that and make you disappear if they wanted to. Tread very carefully in Smolensk Forest. Number 3 on this list is the Smolensky Forest. This is a forest in Russia that is just riddled with tragedy. Reader's Digest says, in 1943, at the height of World War II, German troops invaded the Smolensk forest and discovered a mass grave containing thousands upon thousands of dead Polish soldiers. Ultimately, it was determined they'd been massacred on Joseph Stalin's orders. If the presence of 20,000 lost souls wasn't enough to frighten people away, then the tragic plane crash that took place in 2010, which killed 96 Polish political, military, and business leaders, hammered the nail into the coffin, so to speak. Horrible, guys. Just a horrible place that has seen some horrible things. I don't think that anybody would be shocked if the devil popped up here and just appeared to be hiding out in this Russian forest the whole time. Obviously, to any regular human being, that wouldn't be a place that you'd want to go, but I imagine the devil probably be loving it. Number 2 on this list is the Daring Woods. Another English forest here, and another one that features a highwayman. CN Traveler says the Daring Woods are commonly referred to as the Screaming Woods, or, you know, a perfect place to host your next family camping trip. Visitors report hearing blood-curdling screams coming from the forest depths at night, as well as footsteps and whispers on foggy days. The screams are often attributed to a highwayman who was captured and killed by villagers in the 18th century, and whose ghost apparently still holds quite the grudge. Others believe the hauntings are the result of a 1948 massacre where 20 people were supposedly found dead in the forest the morning of November 1st. Residents reported seeing strange lights emanating from the woods that Halloween night, and autopsies of the bodies couldn't determine a cause of death. 20 people dead in one place in a horrible massacre. The devil might not still be here, but we can say for sure that he was during that horrible tragedy. It's also very possible that a forest like this, one that has had such a bad tragedy, would attract the devil. Apparently it's super foggy here all the time as well, which is probably just another good reason to want to hide here. Daring Woods in England is one that should definitely be avoided, I think, guys. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Aokigahara Forest. This is one of the most infamous forests in the entire world and has a horrible reputation to it. CN Traveler says, this seemingly serene forest at the foot of Mount Fuji has a tormented past. Colloquially known as Suicide Forest, Aokigahara has had the world's second highest rate of suicides after the Golden Gate Bridge in 2010 alone. 247 people attempted to take their own lives, and 54 of them were successful. Some blame this trend on the forest's association with demons in Japanese mythology. Others point towards the density of the trees, which muffles sound and makes it easier to get lost. In fact, many hikers will mark their path with tape or string to make it easier to find their way back out. The sprinkling of clothing and letters left throughout the labyrinth-like woods gives Aokigahara that extra touch that will leave you in a cold sweat. Now, one thing that CN Traveler doesn't even mention here is yobatse. Yobatse is a horrible practice where people will take the elderly or the sick out into the middle of nowhere and just leave them there. This apparently used to happen a lot in Japan and still does happen to this day. If you can't take care of your grandma anymore, no worries, just take her into the forest and leave her there. It is a truly horrible, horrible thing that happens here regularly. Either way, this forest is super messed up and it seems like the perfect spot for the devil. Why is there such a high number of people taking their own lives? Why is it so eerie? Why do people take the elderly and leave them out here? Maybe it's because the devil is playing with their minds. You enter this forest feeling one way, you walk out completely different, if of course you're one of the lucky ones enough to walk out. I'd avoid this forest at all costs, folks. It may have the devil lurking inside. Number 5 on this list is the Pit. So this one is less scary and more just gross, if I'm being honest with you. Frivolous on Reddit says, when I was in the Scouts, or rather the local equivalent, legally adult Scouts had to do the 3-feather challenge. 1 day without food, 1 day without speaking, and 1 day and night alone in the woods with only a knife and a tarp unseen by any human, after which one has to sneak back to the scout camp unnoticed by the sentries and report to the camp master. It was my 3rd day, so I took off, walked for miles through the woods, and found the most remote spot in the wildest, most overgrown part of the woods. Spent a spooky but uneventful night until almost before dawn, when I decided to go for a morning swim in the lake right before taking off to go back. I stripped nude and went towards the lake, but noticed a group of guys fishing, so decided to go back. Suddenly, the ground underneath my feet caved in and I found myself submerged up to my armpits in the absolute vilest mass I have ever smelled. It was a pit where poachers dumped the guts and leftovers of illegally hunted deer, and it fermented for weeks. Imagine the scene. A group of anglers hear some ungodly screaming from the direction of the woods and run there to see if someone needs help. What they see is a teenager-shaped ghoul covered completely in blood and rotten offal who's crawling out of a bloody hole in the ground while shrieking and weeping, then runs at them. I can't imagine how gross it would have been to fall into a pit of dead, rotting animal guts as you're completely naked. Like, that alone would have scarred me for life. And then on the other side of things, to be the anglers and see this golem-like creature covered in guts running at you. I would have thought that whatever this thing is just took down a massive animal or something, and that I'm about to be next on the menu. One would also think that if you're about to do some illegal poaching, that maybe hiding it in a spot where people don't walk would be a good idea. Like, I obviously don't know anything about that world of things at all, but this whole scenario just seems pretty dumb to me, guys. Either way, at least my dude made it out okay, although he had to be covered in guts first. Number 4 on this list is the swinging bag. This story is one that defies all of our understanding of physics. Ranker writes, "My scout troop was on a 10-day backpacking trek at Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico. We were hiking in the southern region and must have been on night 4 or 5. We got to the campsite after a surprise thunderstorm that dumped some hail on us. We set up camp and built a fire to dry out our clothes. While sitting around the campfire, someone noticed that a tent stake bag was hanging on a nearby branch of a tree about 5 feet off the ground. It was swinging back and forth, hard enough that the branch was moving, though no wind was blowing. We stopped it from swinging and watched to see if it would start up again, and it did. It took a few minutes to get going again, but it was swinging on its own in the same direction. We all went to sleep for the night, only to find it in the morning still swinging. We have no idea what would have caused this." Yeah, and what would have caused that? I think our guys would have noticed if the wind was really acting up, or if it had anything to do with that. This sounds like something paranormal for sure. I'm honestly pretty surprised that these guys were left alone that night. Something like this is a telltale warning sign. A ghost or a demon basically telling you to get the hell out of there. The fact that they managed to live through that night and just had the bag sway was really weird. Either way, still a pretty chilling tale. Number 3 on this list is Epping Forest. There could be some very scary and questionable characters lurking in this forest, people who you really shouldn't want to mess with. Matador Network says, part of the dense urban forest that London comprises, the 9 square mile Epping Forest has long been the perfect place for criminals to lay low or to bury their murdered victims. Frighteningly, more than a dozen such victims have been discovered here in the last half century. At least one murder took place in the forest itself at the hands of a notorious highwayman, Dick Turpin. Many of the trees here haven't been cut in nearly 150 years, following legislation to protect the area, leaving them with weirdly deformed shapes. Add in reportedly creepy sounds and ghostly sightings, and this is one hair-raising walk through the woods. Yeah, so when I was referencing the questionable characters, I was talking about deadly criminals, and when I said that you might not want to run into them, well, that's because they could just kill you. Clearly some sort of operation is going on in this forest. Maybe some type of drug deal that goes down here or something like that. If you happen to be going into this forest at the wrong time and stumbled upon something like that, then that's game over. Your picture perfect hike is turning bad really fast. Clearly tons of people have disappeared here over the years. Best to steer clear of this forest if you don't want to end up joining them. Number 2 on this list is the Dow Hill Forest. This forest is located in India and is a place where once you enter, you may never leave. Matador Network says many murders are said to have taken place in these ominous mist-filled woodlands. Reports claim that those who enter feel that they are being watched, and some have even spied a red eye gazing at them and have caught a fleeting glance of an apparition in an ash-colored dress. The most oft-heard rumor is of a headless boy walking on his way from the forest along Death Road to the Dow Hill Victoria Boys School, itself considered one of the most haunted locations in India. Residents who live nearby nearby say that they hear sounds emerging from the school even when it's not in session. Any forest that has a road called Death Road just casually running through it, yeah, that's not a forest for me, guys. Hiking is supposed to be a relaxing and fun experience, not one where you're fearing for your life. That mist that I mentioned earlier as well, apparently that stuff is thick. Like really thick. So thick that you can barely see the ground that you're walking on. Clearly, it's not just naturally occurring, but some sort of paranormal entity is manifesting it. And number 1 on this list is the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. This national park is a beautiful forested area in North Carolina and Tennessee. The reason that it's made this list is because there have literally been a decent amount of documented disappearances here that no one's been able to solve. The NY Post says the first took place on June 4th, 1969, when 6-year-old Dennis Martin was scheming with his brother and 2 other boys in the park's Spence Field while on an annual family camping trip. They were planning to sneak up on their family and startle them. But when the boys ran and jumped on the adults, Dennis was nowhere to be found. On October 8, 1976, while on a horticulture field trip with 40 of her classmates, 16-year-old Trenny Lynn Gibson was hiking along Andrews Bald. No one can recall seeing her after 3 p.m. Searches continued for months, but no trace of Gibson was ever found. 58-year-old Thelma Pauline Melton was hiking near Deep Creek Campground, a trail she'd been on many times before, on September 25, 1981. She was with friends when she walked ahead of them and vanished over a hill, but they couldn't find her on the other side, nor could they find her at the campground where she was staying. Where are these people going, and why can't anyone find them? It's been decades and there still isn't any trace of these folks. Yes, obviously this is a big park and it would be hard to locate someone if they tripped and fell. But still, this has got people thinking that something far more sinister is afoot. A killer of some kind, potentially, who uses this park as their hunting grounds. Whether this killer is human or some type of entity, no one knows for sure. Just stay away from this park so you don't need to be the one to find out.
Coming in at number 5, we have Devil's Tramping Ground, North Carolina. The Devil's Tramping Ground is a camping spot located in a forest near the Harper's Crossroads area in Bear Creek, North Carolina. Throughout history, it has been the subject of persistent local legends and lore, which frequently allege that the devil tramps and haunts a barren circle of ground in which nothing is said to grow. It has also been listed frequently on lists of unusual place names, as you would expect. In North Carolina, tales about the ring, also known as the circle of ground, are well known. These include the disappearance of objects left within the ring overnight, dogs howling, and strange events occurring to those who are brave enough to spend the night within its boundaries. It has been alleged, as I previously mentioned, that nothing has grown within the ring for 100 years. Legend says that this is the very place that the devil himself can rise from the depths of fiery hell and thus come to earth. Sounds great to me. It is also said that at this place the devil is supposed to walk in circles on certain nights and bring his evil into this world. Journalist John William Harden wrote about the area, stating, "Chatham natives say that the devil goes there to walk in circles as he thinks up new means of causing trouble for humanity. There, sometimes during the dark of night, the majesty of the underworld of evil silently tramps around that bare circle, thinking, plotting and planning against good in behalf of wrong." In at number 4, we have Witchwood Forest, England. Witchwood Forest is a biological site of special scientific interest north of Witney in Oxfordshire. Now, unlike the rest of our list, there is no historic event that took place that confirms the forest is in fact haunted. However, it is said by those who step foot in the area that there is hair-raising stuff going on amongst the trees. Some people have reported seeing the apparitions of crying children in a horse-drawn carriage, to even ghostly hands touching them. A more notable story is that of the ghost of Amy Robsart, the wife of the Earl of Leicester. Amy mysteriously died of a broken neck, and one day while hunting in the Witchwood Forest, her husband was said to have stumbled across her ghost. According to the legend, her ghost told him that he would be dead in 10 days. And that he was. The legend has lived on, and it is said that if you dwell in the Witchwood Forest, you will meet the same grisly end as Amy's husband.
Number 3 on this list is The Voice. This is a story of a forest ranger who was on a personal trip, and it's just all kinds of creepy. Ranker says, "I was on a big camping trip with my friends at Suwannee River Music Park in Florida. My sister and I decided to go off and explore some trails around 11 p.m. There was a trail connected to the one we were on, but there was yellow tape strung up between the two trees trees at the entrance. We decided to go in anyway. About 15 steps into the trail, we both hear clear as day, unmistakably, our mother's voice say, "Honey, why is your nose bleeding?" Our mother was not on this trip with us. We turn around to see nothing, and being kind of spooked, we both started to head back to the main trail. A few minutes later, my sister had a nosebleed that lasted like 20 seconds. Now this one is just plain weird, guys. Who was that voice? Where was it coming from? Why did it sound like their mother, and how on earth did it know what was going to happen? So many questions and so little answers with a story like this. Maybe there was something special about this trail and that's why it was taped off. Did someone die here and the ghost was the one imitating their mother's voice? That still doesn't explain how that ghost would know how their mother sounds and also what's going to happen in the future. It seems like they stumbled upon an area of the forest where conventional laws of the world don't apply. Number 2 on this list is the Invisible Man. I guess invisible might not be the best word to describe this guy, because you could see him, he just wasn't actually there. Ranker says, I worked at a summer camp where the cabins were arranged in a circle with a center building that was used for showers and bathrooms. One night, one of my campers, about 12 years old, asks to go to the bathroom just as we had all gone to bed. I tell him to take his bunkmate and go quickly. The bathroom building is about 100 feet away. The kids are kind of dorking around like kids do, and they take off to the bathroom running. All of a sudden, I hear screams that still haunt me. Hysterical, choking for air, horror movie screams. I jump up and run out, and I see the 2 boys sitting on the ground right outside the bathrooms, and they're kind of holding each other. After a few minutes, they calm down enough and say that they ran through a man. They say he appeared right before they got to the bathroom door and was standing in the doorway. They didn't have enough space to stop, and they put their hands up to go through him and into the door. They said there was cold air around him, and that was it. He was gone. They said he had a suit on and black slick back hair and was smiling. Literally 2 kids ran through a dude. This is the type of core memory that I do not want to have. The kids left the camp the next day and apparently were never the same after that. Clearly this man must have been a ghost that died here, but from what and who he was, we may never know. And finally, number 1 on this list is a jungle spirit. Yeah, you heard that right, guys. A literal spirit from the jungle. The story goes, I was working at a survey station deep in the Malaysian jungle in Borneo. I was sleeping in one of the dorms with some of the rangers we were working with, 5 people in the total dorm. That night, I was having a nightmare and woke up at about 2 a.m. to the sound of footsteps outside. Whatever it was fairly big and sounded bipedal. It stopped right outside the window, so I'm staring back at the window trying hard to see. Suddenly, one of the rangers shifted in her bed making a noise, and I could hear whatever it was running away quite fast. Being a rather skeptical person in general, I woke up and asked the rangers the next day about it. They adamantly believed that it was a jungle spirit coming to check us out. The station stood on stilts, so the window sits about 10 feet off the ground. I asked about the possibility of it being a wild animal, but they said that the only things big enough to make that loud of a footprint would have been sun bear or a cloud leopard. They said it's generally unheard of for those animals to make it that close to the survey station, since there are usually people milling about. The rangers have heard the footsteps before, and they firmly believe that a jungle spirit was roaming about the site. I'm getting serious predator vibes from this story, guys. Honestly, if I had this experience, then I am out of there. I don't need to be stalked and eaten by some ancient Malaysian jungle spirit. No thank you. Knowing that you can get attacked by real life animals is bad enough, let alone spirit ones.
Number 5. Hoya Baciu Forest, Romania. Our next entry is going to take us to Transylvania to Romania, the Hoya Baciu Forest. Now forgive me, I probably stepped all over how to pronounce that. My Romanian ain't quite what it used to be, and it didn't start as much. The forest is beautiful, if not more than a little haunted, with countless reports of paranormal activity stemming from within the hectares of the creepily bountiful woods. The place already kind of looks like it's the set to a million Halloween movies as is, with the twisted trees curling ever outwards. Now there are several legends and stories coming out of the forest. It's even been called the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. It's quite the resume. According to one legend, a girl went wandering in the forest one day to escape the difficulties of life and take her mind off her troubles, and she found herself lost in the forest and never returned. Her family looked and looked for her, but to no avail. They never found her and assumed that their daughter had passed until she reappeared and walked her way home 5 years later, unsure where she'd been, and said she didn't remember anything of the experience, without having aged a day on her. Well, time forest over there. A shepherd and his flock of over 200 sheep were said to have vanished without a single trace, not even a hoof print. And there's a woman who went wandering through the forest and came back and discovered she had a 19th century coin in her pocket. In the 1960s, biologist Alexander Sift photographed a strange object he saw above the sky of the Hoya Baciu forest, which would gain notoriety as a UFO sighting. What I'm trying to get across with the Hoya Baciu forest here is that it is a real cosmic gumbo of scary stuff. What wasn't happening here that was supernatural? I think you guys need to go, I don't know, check the soil or something. There's definitely something in the dirt there causing all those hauntings. And if you're looking for way more stories of haunted forests or really just about anything scary, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. If it's freaky, we've done a video or two on it. So hit that little subscribe button, please ring that bell if you're feeling so kind, but, and I know this is a big ask, do that at the end of this video, okay? Because I got way more haunted forests coming up for you literally right this second, right now. Number 4, Highgate Cemetery. If you stroll through Highgate Cemetery, there's a good chance you'll run into someone famous. The beloved novelist Douglas Adams, the beloved novelist Karl Marx is also an author of sorts, or perhaps you'll run into the Highgate vampire, or one of the witches and spirits that are said to live within this hallowed plot. Highgate Cemetery was raised in the early 1800s, when the city's population was topping the 1 million mark and not slowing down anytime soon, even with a rising number of dead. A lot of dead. Undertakers would cram graves between shops and taverns, shallow graves hastily covered with lime. It got so bad that undertakers would dress as clergymen so that they could carry out dead in secret, illegal ceremonies. Imagine being part of an illegal street burial. And that's happening as late as the 1830s. That is insane. With the stench and disease filling up the streets, Parliament had to move to put all the dead somewhere because just in between the Tesco wasn't really doing it for anybody. And in the 1830s, they passed an expansion project to add 7 cemeteries into the city of London, with Highgate being exalted as the most luxurious one. Anybody who's anybody wanted to be decomposing in Highgate. Highgate found a surge of new excitement and energy in the 70s when it became a popular site for horror movie film sets. I mean, look at the place, it looks very scary. It eventually meant that the place got an unexpected boost from paranormal hunters who wanted to come check out what was going on there, and legends of the Highgate vampire became common through the 70s. He was said to be a Romanian nobleman from the Middle Ages, and his coffin was brought to England from Europe in the 18th century, and his followers bought him a house in the West End. I don't know about a wealthy Romanian nobleman having followers that buy houses for a dead man. That does seem a bit suspicious. Allegedly now, his followers performed a ritual to bring him back, and now if you believe those legends, he can be seen as a tall, dark figure that glides through the cemetery. Is he out there? You'd have to book a ticket to Highgate, because I'm not looking to find out anytime soon. Unless Top 5 Scary wants to pay for my trip, and then we can talk. We'll talk about that after we're finished filming, okay?
Coming in at number 3, the Black Forest, Germany. The Black Forest is a large forested mountain range in the state of Baden-Württemberg in southwest Germany. Historically, the area was known for ore deposits, which led to mining featuring heavily in the local economy. However, in more recent years, tourism has become the primary industry, accounting for around 140,000 jobs. Now, the forest itself got its name from the conifers that block out most light below, giving the area a mysterious aura. The forest is nestled deep within the southwestern Germany, with the area's tall evergreens being as sinister as they are beautiful. It is also said to be home to paranormal creatures ranging from witches to even werewolves. This in turn inspired the brothers Grimm to write their famous stories, Hansel and Gretel, Rapunzel, and Sleeping Beauty. Some of the many legends that surround the forest goes as follows: a headless huntsman riding on a white steed, a king who kidnaps women to take them to his underwater lair, and of course friendly dwarfs and frightening werewolves. It makes sense now why this would be the location of many of the Brothers Grimm's fairy tales. Coming in at number 2, Hoya Baciu Forest, Romania. The Hoya Forest is situated to the west of the city of Cluj-Napoca, near the open-air section of the Ethnographic Museum of Transylvania. It is a beautiful place that often lures in bikers and hikers from around the world. However, according to legend, the forest is the location of paranormal activity. According to one visitor, I quote, We are in the clearing. The trees stop in a uniform oval where nothing grows and where, since official records began, nothing has grown. Once when I came here, says Alex, our guide, I found 60 people from Bucharest trying to open a gate into another dimension. Now the clearing is supposedly the creepiest place in the entire forest and is said to defy the investigations of soil scientists and attracts Roman witches as well as people trying to clean the forest of its evil. Now the forest first came to international attention in 1968 when a military technician by the name of Emil Barnier photographed what he believed was a UFO hovering over the clearing. Now at the time the communist government equated the belief in the paranormal as madness as well as state sabotage, so in turn Barnier lost his job. As of today, many people who visit the forest and specifically the clearing report strange symptoms including nausea, anxiety as well as the feeling of being watched. Not to mention, as I said before, nothing seems to grow in the clearing according to official records. Weirder still, trees in the surrounding area grow in odd patterns, zigzags and spirals that no one has been able to explain. Very creepy indeed. And finally, coming in at number 1, Aokigahara Forest, Japan. Also known as the Sea of Trees or more commonly the Suicide Forest, this is a forest on the northwestern flank of Japan's Mount Fuji, existing on the hardened lava laid down by the last major eruption of Mount Fuji in 864 CE. The forest has a reputation as the home to ghosts of the dead in Japanese mythology. In more recent years though, it has become known as the Suicide Forest, with it being one of the world's most used suicide sites. In 2003, 105 bodies were discovered in the forest, exceeding the previous record of around 78 back in 2002. Jumping forward to 2010, the police recorded more than 200 people having attempted suicide in the forest, of whom 54 were successful, which is absolutely devastating. Now, some people blame this horrific trend on the forest's association with demons in Japanese mythology. However, others credit it to the tightly packed trees, which make it easy to get lost in the forest and muffle sounds, in turn providing an isolated location. As you would expect, many spiritualists have visited the forest who have called the site a hotbed of paranormal activity. These people believe that the suicides in the forest have permeated the forest's trees, which in turn has generated paranormal activity in the area, preventing anyone who may enter from leaving the depths of the forest. Many hikers who decide to make their way through the dense forest will often mark their path with tape or string to make it easier to find their way out again, and those who visit say the forest is deeply unsettling, with the sprinkling of clothing and litter lying around.
Number 5. Elfin Forest in California. California tends to be a spooky place as it is, and the community of Elfin Forest sounds like it belongs in the world of Tolkien, even though it lies just southwest of Escondido in San Diego County. Yep, I totally had to call up the friend who used to live in California for that pronunciation. Thanks, Lore, and if I got that wrong, pardon me, I'm exhausted. How fitting then that this forest is crawling with tall tales, myths, and stories of haunted spirits and goblins. It's allegedly home to a sect of psychics and other occult practitioners that dwell in the woods. They like to talk to visitors about the many paranormal influences on the earth, and many of the stories of the forest are preserved by them. We do have some footage from YouTubers known as Zero Occupancy Urbex, where they captured some of the creepy sounds that have been known to come out of said forest. Now, while I'm not sure which tale of the forest those noises came from, let's explore the legends together. It is told that many years ago, a family of 3 went through the woods exploring and having fun. It was a difficult period of time, perhaps more violent, and the neighbors weren't surprised when the family didn't return for days. Finally, just as their friends began to be concerned, a lone individual ascended a hill and stumbled down. Even, with all the grime and ripped clothes, as well as a sight of sheer dread in her eyes, people identified her as the family's, woman, the wife, the mother. According to her, her husband and son were dead after a group of men had sprung out of nowhere and attacked the family. She was able to flee the crime scene, but all the people she cared about were ripped apart. Her dread in the eyes faded over time, but a cold, steely rage took place. That's scary, trust me. The woman seemed to transform into a different person as she spent her days reading old books with weird characters and her nights meeting strangers from local and faraway groups. She was finally ready, she said. She entered the wilderness dressed entirely in white and was never seen again. Oh, I love a good white lady. Hikers and campers in the forest have reported witnessing the ghostly ghostly form of a woman floating on the grounds as the years and decades have passed. It moves amazingly quickly at times and excruciatingly slowly at others. Attempting to communicate with her is pointless since she's simply gonna vanish, yet everyone who's met her did so before she could pack her belongings and leave. In the so-called Spook Canyon location, there was once a Romani colony who devoted their time to what many would consider dark pursuits in search of connection and seclusion. So they became friends with other local communities over time and shared some of their activities. They said that dozens of young people from other communities were hastily buried on the slopes surrounding the canyon, and they wanted to converse with the dead. And apparently, the mission succeeded because several glimpses of groups of young people running and playing in the early hours of the morning were soon recorded by a local spiritualist. A fair, English guy wearing an old stove cap and swinging a lantern in a boisterous manner is another unique occurrence. So, Harmony Grove is the name of the former Romani community today. It is still a gathering place, like I said, for occultists and paranormalists, as well as ghost hunters. The original Romani people sadly clashed with the residents of neighboring towns, causing an enraged mob to chase them away, and several of them were slain while the rest fled. They cursed the forest as a whole and incited their spiritual allies to, engage in wrath, and they fled. One of them is alleged to have been left behind and is still alive today. She assumes the form of a black cloaked woman riding a black steed. Now, visitors entering the forest may experience a shiver, which is an unspoken sign of the witch, and according to legend, if a bear returns to the jungle, you're not gonna leave. The witch will mount her stallion and focus her eyes on them, killing them instantaneously. So let me know in the comments, out of all those ghosties, which one do you think made those noises? Look, I'm betting on the witch. I always bet on the white lady. Number 4, the Hoya Baciu Forest in Romania. So this forest in Transylvania has been called one of the world's most haunted places after a series of paranormal activities and strange occurrences. Granted, being located in Transylvania, home to all things ooky spooky vampire gothic, probably only helps with the rumors. There have been many unsettling tales that have been told of the Romanian forest for hundreds of years, making it nearly impossible to separate fact from fiction. Popular YouTube channel Overnight decided to spend a night in the forest, and we do have snippets of their video, and hopefully you can hear the audio. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what I heard. Located in northwestern Romania, it's known as the Bermuda Triangle of Romania, since strange disappearances are said to have occurred here. Like a shepherd who's said to have disappeared with a flock of 200 sheep, and a young girl who disappeared here only to emerge 5 years later without having aged. However, one of the strangest events that happened in the forest comes from the tale of a woman who disappeared with a 15th century coin in her pocket. After a significant amount of time had passed, the woman returned as if no time had passed with the same coin. Its reputation as a home for the paranormal and possibly alien encounters is heightened by its eerie atmosphere of twisted skeletal trees that span across 700 acres. Now, this was due to the reported UFO sightings that were famously photographed in the 1960s by biologist Alexander Sift, which showed flying objects and gave the forest a reputation as a place for strange and unexplainable events. Even the forest trees themselves hold an enigma, as these 200-year-old trees seem to be young, and most of them are twisted at the trunk or unusual in shape. Most of the paranormal activity seems to be concentrated in a particular part of the forest, which is free of vegetation and formed into a perfect circle. Now, the soil of this vegetation-free area has been tested, and no anomalies were found that would prevent the growth of any plant life. Visitors often report intense feelings of anxiety and the feelings of being constantly watched. The forest website even warns it, and the locals tend to stay away because they fear that if they enter, they're not going to find their way out. There are many first-hand reports from people who visited the forest and left with strange symptoms, which range from a mild case of unease to physical symptoms such as severe rashes, headaches, and even burns. No thanks, I've already got weird bruises enough as it is. Thanks, ADHD.
Number 3, Pine Barrens, New Jersey. Our next entry is the famous Pine Barrens of New Jersey. The lush, verdant fields span over 1 million acres and 7 counties in New Jersey, and if you believe the legend, are said to be the home of New Jersey's most infamous resident. No, not Snooki. I'm talking about the Jersey Devil, America's favorite winged monstrosity. Well, after Mothman, maybe. You let me know down below in the comments. Jersey Devil, Mothman, whose side you got? Way back when the country was still blossoming and clinking glasses, celebrating that whole revolution business, the Barrens were a place of burgeoning industry, host to sawmills, paper mills, and other lesser non-mill based industries that don't bear mentioning. Eventually, people ran from the mills and to the hills when coal was said to be found in Pennsylvania, leaving the Barrens, well, a little bit barren. As most residents went off to try and get a lump of coal in their stocking, the Barrens were left behind, leaving ghost towns, but more importantly, ghost stories and legends of the Jersey Devil. If you're a top 5 scary fan, you've definitely heard a thing or two about the Jersey Devil, but between you and me, you could always stand to hear a little more. There are several legends and fables about this wretched creature, but one of the more consistently retold stories is that there was an old crone who had given birth 12 times. And that wasn't enough apparently, because on her 13th birth, the devil cursed her and the Jersey Devil was born. A foul beast with a goat's head, leathery wings, and hooves. It flew up the chimney into the Barrens and became a figure of legend, being spotted hundreds of times in the 19th century, with some papers even offering a bounty for the creature's head. Now, as far as I know, that bounty is still up if anyone's looking to collect and looking for an easy way to pay rent. You just gotta ship up to the Barrens and bag the devil. Done and done. 20 minutes work, in and out. Number 2, Manchac Swamp. Okay, this one might be a slight cheat. I hear you guys raising your pitchforks and your torches saying, that's a swamp, that's not a forest. But what is a swamp if not a particularly marshy forest? They're all boreal ecosystems, okay? We are splitting hairs here. The point is that this one's haunted and there's trees around it. So I think that's enough to qualify it for a position on this list of cursed brush. New Orleans is filled to bursting with 2 things: the most wondrous advancements in soul food and gumbo on the planet, and ghost stories. There's a whole lot of voodoo to go around in Louisiana, and in Manchac they say there's the ghost of an old voodoo priestess named Julie White. The story of Julie White is an unnerving one. She was said to be a bit of a recluse and would sit on the porch of her swamp shack and spend the day cackling away. I gotta be honest, that sounds like the life. That sounds like the perfect life. Just sitting on a swamp listening to the crawdads sing, cackling and cursing nearby towns. Allegedly, she would predict the demise of nearby towns and their residents. She would sing twisted songs about her death, their death, the end of days, basically everybody dying. Despite the fact that she was a kooky old lady singing songs about the apocalypse on her front steps, locals actually trusted her quite a bit as an oracle and a prophet, and were fearful of wronging her just in case she placed a hex on them. Now, the prediction she's most well known for, besides one really bizarre oddball correct prediction about the outcome of the 1994 Super Bowl Cowboys at Bills game, was her threatening prediction in 1915, where Julie White would cackle over and over that she was going to die and take everyone with her. She chanted this again and again for days until eventually passing away in her chair. On her funeral, a hurricane hit the town, decimating 3 villages and taking countless lives. Julie is said to be buried somewhere in the swamp, and locals believe it was her spirit that caused that hurricane. So if you go on through, just be nice, I guess. Pay a little respect to Miss Julie White. Number 1, Cameron Park, Texas. Our last entry for today is going to be Cameron Park in picturesque Texas. The park and the forest are just gorgeous, a beautiful little slice of Americana, but you and I both know that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about paranormal hauntings, and you better believe Cameron Park has that, buddy. They couldn't even settle on just one haunted spot in this park, as the place is said to be home to more than a few. We've got Jacob's Ladder, which is a set of stairs that is said to be haunted by the climber's ghost, a malevolent prankster spirit with a bit of a dark sense of humor that tugs at visitors and tries to pull them down the stairs. Terribly rude behavior from a ghost. Now, the most well-known site of paranormal activity in Cameron Park, though, is the Witch's Castle, the nickname given to the collapsing ruins that lay in the heart of the park. Now, according to local folklore, the castle are the ruins of a house that once belonged to a woman accused of witchcraft. Okay, I'm actually witch accused, old castle, house, putting this all together. Yeah, okay, I kind of understand where the name Witch's Castle comes from. It's fascinating how the etymology of language works. Sometimes it's obvious. In the late 1800s, people kept going missing around the areas surrounding Cameron Park, leading to locals to suspect that our mystery Jane Doe was involved somehow, and they retaliated the only way people in the 1800s knew how to deal when they suspected a woman of heresy and witchcraft. You know what they did? They reasonably sat down with her, they had an adult conversation, they talked about their suspicions, their expectations. No, they formed a mob and burned her house down while she was still inside. Of course they did. So is it any surprise then that the locals have shared stories about how the witch's restless spirit haunts the grounds of Cameron Park and is said to appear out to visitors who can hear her cackle during late hours of the night? No, I would say that's not much of a surprise at all. That sounds completely reasonable.
Number 5, the fog ghosts of Yellowstone National Park. Now, those of you who have watched me before know that I love a good ghost story or spotting, and I'm thrilled to kick off today with this one. Ghostly figures like to appear in the park when the weather turns cold, especially when temperatures can plummet to like minus 30 degrees. As someone who has been in a cold room that was occupied by ghosts before, and has also experienced being in temperatures around minus 40, I can both validate the statement and shiver at the memory. Our first ghostie is Maddie Culver, a sweet lady who passed during birth on March 2nd of 1989 at the now gone Firehole Hotel Hotel, once located several miles north of the Old Faithful Inn, and nervously flutters about, heartbroken over not living to see her offspring grow up. When Mrs. Culver died, the hotel's grounds were too frozen to dig her a grave, so Maddie's body was placed in 2 pickle barrels and buried in a snowdrift until spring thaw. Poor thing. Today, not far from her grave, is Dead Maiden Spring, which seems kind of fitting in a morbid way. According to Lee Whittlesley, a park historian, the grave is later fenced and maintained by the wife of a park concessionaire, and Maddie's young daughter was sent to live with relatives. We also have L.R. Piper, a cashier from the First National Bank of St. Mary's, Ohio, who on July 30th of 1890 stepped out of the now-gone Fountain Hotel to enjoy a after-dinner cigar and vanished. Well, if we needed an additional public service announcement that cigars can be bad for your health, there it is. U.S. Army troops stationed in Yellowstone at the time searched for a month for Piper, and his brother-in-law spent the month of September that year looking for him. At one point, he even slept under the stars, hoping that coyote howls would lead him to Piper's remains. It's believed that Piper walked out into the night and inadvertently stumbled into one of the many hot springs that are located nearby. 2 of the hot springs there, Gentian Pool and Deep Blue Geyser, are very large and very deep, and it's believed that a search of them might yield his petrified bones. Charles Phillips is also one that could be doing the haunting, though. He was a ranger stationed at Old Faithful during the winter of 1926 to 27. He died after eating water hemlock that he mistook for wild parsnip. According to Death in Yellowstone, the ranger's body was found on the floor of the ranger station. Investigators found that he had apparently come out of the bedroom into the kitchen and fell forward, hitting his head above his left eye on the table. Dirt on his hands indicated he had crawled on the floor for a while, probably in agony, and he exhibited the vomiting and frothing at the mouth, which are characteristic of hemlock poisoning. Delicious! Number 4, a ghost dog. Mo Luttrell has been a ranger in the USFS for almost 15 years, but this scary story took place during his 3rd year of employment. His station was getting calls about a lone wolf with a collar on hanging around campsites, which he found weird since wolves aren't known to be in the area, but when you work in the field long enough you start to realize anything's possible apparently. Thankfully, no calls had mentioned violent behavior from the animal. So Mo departed from the station around noon to check out the places that the wolf had been sighted, and wandered around for about 3 hours until he took a break for water. When he was getting ready to go again, the wolf, appeared about 20 feet away, trotting near the tree line. It seemed friendly and had the collar, so Mo whistled to it and it bounded over to him. And once the creature got closer, he quickly realized it was just a big dog and not a wolf. And they lived happily ever after. Okay, you should know better than that. Mo radioed in and reported that he had the dog with him, but just as he said those words, the dog took off. He chased the dog through the forest for at least 5 minutes before it slowed down near a rock bed / creek area and started piecing around a spot. Mo got closer and noticed the overgrowth had almost disguised what appeared to be bones. He called it in immediately, and another team was sent to recover the remains. When he went to retrieve the dog, it was just gone. The bones were identified as a teenage male's, dying by a self-inflicted wound to the head. He'd been reported missing in the area way long time ago before Mo had become a ranger, and there had been pretty much no hope of ever finding him. Mo spoke to his mom on the phone, and she asked how he'd found her son. He mentioned the black dog and was met with silence from the mom. After he gave a couple of details about the dog, she quietly explained that her son, who struggled with making connections, had sunk into a deep depression after the death of his best friend, the very dog that led Mo to him. What a very good doggy. Pardon me, I think I have tears in my eyes. Number 3, Raw Ghosts of Yellowstone National Park. Yep, a ghost story. I know, shocker, it's me. Ghostly figures like to appear in the park when the weather turns cold, especially when temperatures can plummet to like -30. As somebody who's been in a cold room that was occupied by ghosts before, and has also experienced being in temperatures around -40, I can both validate this statement and shiver at the memory. Now before we get into legends that could possibly be the reason for the noises, I'll let the clip play.
What does it sound like to you?
I know, chilling, right? So our first ghostie that this could possibly be from is Maddie Culver, a sweet lady who passed while giving birth on March 2nd of 1889 at the now gone Fire Hell Hotel, which was once located several miles north of the Old Faithful Inn. And nervously, she likes to flutter about, heartbroken over not living to see, her offspring grow up. When Mrs. Culver passed away, the hotel's grounds were too frozen to dig her grave, so her body was placed in 2 pickle barrels and buried in a snowdrift until spring thaw. Today, not far from her grave, is Dead Maiden Spring, which seems fitting and a bit of a morbid way. According to Lee Whittlesley, a park historian, the grave was later fenced and maintained by the wife of a park concessionaire, and Maddie's 18-month-old young was sent to live with relatives. We also have L.R. Piper, a cashier from the First National Bank of St. Mary's, Ohio, who on July 30th of 1890 stepped out of the now-gone Fountain Hotel to enjoy an after-dinner cigar and vanished. Well, if we needed an additional public service announcement that cigars can be bad for your health, voila, folks! U.S. Army troops stationed in Yellowstone at the time searched for a month for Piper, and his brother-in-law spent the month of September that year looking for him. And at one point, he even slept under the stars, hoping that, the coyote howls would help him find stuff. It is believed that Piper walked out into the night and inadvertently stumbled into one of the many hot springs that are located nearby. Now, 2 of the hot springs there, Gentian Pool and Deep Blue Geyser are very large and very deep, and it's believed that a search of them might yield the petrified bones. Charles Phillips is also somebody that could be doing the haunting and the noisies. He was a ranger stationed at Old Faithful during the winter of 1926 to 27 and passed after eating water hemlock, which he took for wild parsnip. According to Death in Yellowstone, the ranger's body was found on the floor of the ranger station. Investigators found that he had apparently come out of the bedroom into the kitchen and fell forward, hitting his head above his left eye on the table. Now, the dirt on his hands indicated that he had crawled on the floor for a while, probably in agony, and he exhibited the retching and frothing at the mouth, which are characteristics of hemlock poisoning. Delicious. Number 2, Witchwood Forest in the United Kingdom. So more than a few visitors to Witchwood Forest, a former royal hunting ground, have reported feeling invisible hands touch their shoulders or hearing the thunder of invisible horses. Yep, more footage, I promise. I do my best to keep things credible around here. So this comes from popular YouTube channel 333 Ghost Hunting, which I have to admit, it's a pretty funny and clever name. Very good reference to the witching spiritual hour. It's enough to, make your spine tingle and at the, So this clip is enough to make your spine tingle at the slightest rustle in the leaves. So, who could it be? The most compelling is the case of Amy Robsart, the wife of the Earl of Leicester, who mysteriously passed of a broken neck. Now later, while the Earl was hunting in the woods, his late wife's ghost confronted him and predicted that he would join her in 10 days, which she did after suddenly falling ill. Now, anybody who meets the ghost, it said their similar fate's gonna happen. Good luck! Number 1, Pine Barrens, New Jersey. So, anybody want to guess what this forest is home to? Think Jersey. Yep, the devil himself. The forest floor of New Jersey's extensive pine barrens are sandy, acidic, and nutrient poor. And yet the pine barrens are filled with plant life, including pine trees that thrive on forest fires in order to thrive. That's a heck of a sentence. So, to understand the legend of the Jersey Devil, first you must understand his birthplace. It is a remote region extending 1,700 square miles across southeastern New Jersey. It is actually a giant aquifer with dense strands of white cedar. Inside, the air is calm, still and cool, but the shadows are heavy. The cedar stands throughout the swamp, stain the streams red with tannin. Now, one area of stunted trees is called Pygmy Forest. While many consider it a barren wilderness, 27 varieties of orchids actually grow there. So, in the 18th century, the area came to be populated with outcasts of one kind or another, and over time, its residents seemed almost, to cultivate a hillbilly-like backwardsness that some believe is intended to keep outsiders outside. And that, my friends, is how it became the home of one of the most famous cryptids of all time, a monster with, a ghost head, bat wings, and cloven hoof. The audio we have is from user Howie here on YouTube, and just like the other entries on today's list, I have no idea how to describe it, so listen for yourself. Seriously, it gave me chills. So glad I wasn't listening to that while home alone.